Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that covers college basketball and the NBA draft inside and out. I am Rich Harris, and thanks for joining us again. Today, I am joined by Jake Kopstick. I know you all were, we've received so many emails saying, where's Jake? Where's Jake? You know, and I keep on telling them that, there's a reboot of Gotham and you've been needed on the set. Did you ever check out the picture of that actor? He has an Irish name.
He does look like me, yes.
Yeah, he talks like you somewhat too. And he actually, in the show, he kind of has your personality, like this underlying, I don't know. He has an outward calmness, but this underlying intensity. So anyway, so Jake, honest, this is like the first time we've talked since the last show we did. How are you doing? How's the football team doing?
So football team is 2-1. We had an unfortunate loss at home to Dartmouth on Saturday. Too many turnovers. 3 fumbles, a block punt. Wasn't too pretty our best day. But we did win our first 2 out of conference games. Ivy League plays 10 games for those who don't know. AA, Ivy League, doing it forever. They don't play in the playoffs. You get 10 games.
They don't participate in the.
They don't even play in the playoff.
I did not know that because often you see them ranked, or at least they have in the past.
Yeah, they'll be ranked. I know Princeton was ranked last year. But yeah, you just play 10 games. So we won our first 2 out of conference against Colgate and at Bucknell. Very, very long days. I pulled a 21-hour shift coming back from Colgate and had to drive home from that one. Yeah, my hours are just off the charts. I've become an energy drink guy, which isn't probably good at all, but they work. But yeah, it's a lot of hours, but it's fun. Hopefully we can get a ring this year in the Ivy League. 1 loss, although it's not great to start with one, doesn't end your quest for an Ivy League championship or mean you're out of it by any means. So
right,
yeah, hopefully we could pick it up. And we have a game this weekend against Georgetown at home, our last out of conference game, and then we're back on the road to Columbia, which is good that we don't have to drive too far.
Right.
Yeah, but it's moving. It's moving. It's hard to believe
I could be in Columbia on a Saturday morning. Probably I could be there. Probably just about an hour.
Well, hopefully it only takes us about an hour and a half to get there. Hopefully we don't decide to drive up and hit all the North Jersey, New York rush hour traffic.
Can you get me on the sidelines if I show up?
I can certainly get you a ticket. I doubt that Columbia will sell you out. Will sell out. Sideline's different story, but I know for a fact you can have a ticket.
If I have to sit in the stands, I'm going to throw stuff at you.
You can throw it at me. Don't throw it at our guys, but throw it at me. I'm probably messing up or doing something wrong. So that's all right. I'll take anything.
So I actually thought I had you beat, but you already outdid me. I pulled a 16-hour workday yesterday, but 21 hours that's got me beat. So
yeah, that's most insane one I've ever done. Hopefully I don't top that because that was absolutely ridiculous.
Right. All right, so we're going to move on to our college hoops notebook. We don't have a ton to talk about, and most of it's not good news. And a story we've been following all off season. It seems like we talk about him every other episode. And now we're probably done talking to him maybe for the rest of his life. Arterio Morris, former 5-star, started off at Texas, then transferred to Kansas. Somewhere in between there, he was arrested for assaulting his girlfriend. He pleaded that down or pleaded no contest, so that turned into a misdemeanor. But then there were rape allegations, and they turned out he was arrested last week and charged with rape. So Kansas had initially suspended him indefinitely. Now they just kicked him out of the program, and that's 2 incidents now of violence against young women. I think Morris is, former 5-star. I mean, But I would say his NBA dreams are over before they even started.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is going to be the case, especially when there's a history here. I read a pretty good article, I think it was by Gary Parrish of CBS, about programs and coaches that will take a second chance on a guy who has a history of assaulting women or has incidents with domestic violence or battery or just anything I guess relationship related. And in just about every case there doesn't really seem like a good reason to there doesn't seem like there's no good reason to keep a guy or to bring a guy on who has a history of this. These things don't go away. One thing that's always stuck with me, I heard Nick Saban talking about what he says to NFL scouts when they call him about his players to Alabama. And he said, anything that comes after and is good, and anything that comes after but is not good. And usually, almost all the time, anything that comes after but is always true and usually sticks with guys. Unfortunately, that's the case here. This never got any better with Arterio Morris. And unfortunately, like after being on campus for a handful of months or if not weeks, has a charge like this against him. There's no place for this at all. And I think you're absolutely right, Rich. Before he even hits the court for Kansas, before they really have any practice at all, any meaning. I know they had done an international tour before this team even has any meaningful practice, because I know those just started recently. He's already off the team. I really don't want to talk about basketball here because that's not what the big issue is here. But it's certainly a big loss. I feel like lowers Kansas's ceiling. It's just unfortunate that this stuff has to happen. And honestly, it's unfortunate that a guy like him with a history like that gets a second chance and probably at the time was paid quite a bit of money for that second chance to go play for Kansas.
Yeah. These arrests happened, I believe, about 15 months separated them. But I mean, this one is far more serious. And he could be spending a number of years in jail if it's true. Apparently, his teammates are witnesses, not because they were involved, but I guess they heard the disturbance in the dormitory. So they weren't actual, literal, right there in the room witnesses, but they apparently they were interviewed about the disturbance, which they heard at 4:30 in the morning. By the way, this girl, I mean, Morris is about 6'3", 200 pounds. This girl, we don't know her name, and nor do I, want to say that, even if I did. But I do know she was 5'3", 108 pounds. It just sends chills down my spine to think about, how vulnerable, she was. But anyway, of course, there's a chance he could be innocent. Obviously not, innocent before proven guilty, but Kansas feels there's enough there that it's just not worth the hassle. All right. So the defending champs, UConn Huskies, and their best returning player, Donovan Clingan, their big center who was outstanding. We project to be a lottery pick right now. Is expected to miss a month after sustaining a foot sprain. So it's not a broken bone. Now, if this is what's Lisfranc?
Lisfranc, yeah.
Yeah, that's a sprain. So hopefully it's not that, because that could be a pain that could linger. But anyway, they say he's going to miss about a month, and that's about a week old. So hopefully he'll be back sooner than later. Not a big concern right now, but worth mentioning. Something that happened this weekend concerning a team that we're going to talk about this week is UNLV forward Kalib Boone, transfer from Oklahoma State, who has had his I don't know how to best describe it. I don't know of anything where he's gotten in trouble with the law, but he's definitely had some trouble getting along with his coaching staff and so forth, including last year at Oklahoma State. over the weekend, he was arrested and charged with DUI. Now, I haven't heard anything from UNLV. I don't know how this is going to affect his status, but it is a concern. And as we will talk, when we do talk about UNLV, he's arguably their best player. So, yeah. All right. And then lastly, I learned this by doing some research into mid-majors, and I contacted McNeese State about talking to one of their players, and specifically I asked for Zach Harvey, a former top 50 recruit, 4-star guy who's kind of bounced around, but you figured, this was his chance to kind of get his act together. He did not, McNeese told me he didn't enroll in school. And I was like, because he had committed to them. And so then I researched it more, and he is actually now playing for, I can't even pronounce the name. It is a team in the Serbian KLS league. That's the top league in Serbia, and also a feeder league for the Adriatic. So the Adriatic League basically takes the best of the Serbian, Croatian, Slovenian leagues, maybe the Montenegro League, and that's the Adriatic League is a super league of the Eastern European teams, and so he will be playing there. It is not a top-notch league, but he'll certainly be playing at a higher level than he would at McNeese State. It's probably kind of similar to maybe playing in the Mountain West, I would say, just to give you an idea. So, Zach is a 6'6", 195-pound wing. Like I said, top 5 guy, played a couple years at Cincinnati, and he transferred to Santa Barbara and barely got on the court. So not sure why that's the case. He probably had a couple years of eligibility left, but he decided to move on to the pros. Whether McNeese State knows that or not, I'm not sure. All right. So any comments on those last 3 stories, Jake? Clingan, Boone, and Harvey.
Yeah, so I think obviously the biggest one is Kalib Boone not going to play for UNLV this year. No decision's been made on him. Latest that I saw, because it is, very, very recent stuff, is that they're still in the process of gathering more information. So I'm sure that's basically code word for they're determining a punishment for him right now. But yeah, definitely a huge loss if he is to miss time. And then on the Zach Harvey front, as you just mentioned, I'm not really worried about the Clingan news. If he misses a couple games in the very beginning of the season, fine. But that's not a death knell for UConn at all, or Clingan. I mean, a lot of people expect him to be a top breakout guy, an All-American, an All-Big East type player. So if he's just going to miss some ramp-up time here, I'm really not too concerned about that. But on the Zach Harvey front, McNeese is going to run away with that conference, whether he was going to play or not. They're head and shoulders above the rest of the Southland, which is a rough conference to begin with ever since the WAC took a couple of their teams. They're still going to – and now that they have Will Wade too, they're going to run away with that conference. And then you even talk about Texas A&M Corpus Christi losing Steve Lutz and losing that whole roster that decided to transfer to Western Kentucky, or Isaac Mushila, who we're going to talk about, is at New Mexico.
Northwestern State lost pretty much all their guys. They could have been good, but
yeah, like it's McNeese is going to run away with that, and it won't be close.
Right.
So whether they and Will Wade did a great job bringing in a bunch of guys to transfer down to go play there. So with Zach Harvey, without Zach Harvey, McNeese will be just fine. Will Wade will have them dominating that conference.
Right. Harvey, on paper, figured to be perhaps their best player, probably their most talented player, but he's really never put it together. And he's been in college for 4 years, hasn't put together one single good season. So, like I said, this is a former 4-star guy. And so I don't know. It's kind of, now's the time for him to make his name, because and he will automatically go into the draft now. He will be in next year's draft. So since he's decided to pass on college. All right. So we have a couple other things from the notebook. And one thing we've been talking about a lot over the summer was the eligibility of DeAndre Williams finally heard that he's been denied. However, Memphis and his attorney have resubmitted the application with additional information that the NCAA requested. So it's not a done deal, but my gut is telling me it's not looking good.
Yeah, it sucks. It just took this long to figure out. I mean, I felt like we had 2 or 3 different updates that said, "Hey, it's going to happen. It's going to come this week. It's going to come this week."
Right.
And here we are. We're a month away from the season. We still haven't gotten this. But I get it with the whole situation that he was homeschooled in high school, and then there was a transfer and an injury.
Yeah, it was an injury. Yeah.
But it's like, he's going to be 27 years, 20, he's
This
going
month.
on 27 years old.
This month, yeah.
So it's rare that you see this happen. In college football, there's a guy at, I believe, Oregon with an 8th or a 9th year with a bunch of, medical red shirts and stuff like that. But even with all that, it just seemed hard when you have a guy that's, a handful of years away from being 30. And he might be on a team with some 18-year-olds. It seems like that seems like a hard thing to kind of get done.
I was, every once in a while I do some consulting for European teams. And so I was kind of reviewing some of the results from the combines because they had a specific request. I get specific requests like in terms of what their physical abilities or physical body might look like. You'd be surprised the things that people ask me to look for. I need a guy who's 5'4" and anyway. And what I noticed when I was doing that research, DeAndre, I completely forgot about this. DeAndre Williams participated at Pitt.
Which you think would
which somebody else who did that is already going to miss the first 3 games of the season. I forget who it was, but he's in what's his face from Arizona, the Texas transfer, little guard,
Courtney Ramey.
Courtney Ramey had to miss a few games last year, and somebody's going to have to miss a few games this year. So Williams, if he would get approved, he's also looking at missing some games for attending Pitt. So I'm not sure why he hasn't moved on with his pro career. I also reached out to the NBA with him and said, was this guy in last year's draft or is he going to be in this year's draft? And of course, the NBA is too busy to answer me. I haven't given up on that answer because ultimately I need to know, is he in this draft class or not? Though he probably not going to, at 27 years old, his chances of being drafted are very, very slim. But the other note I want to mention before we can wrap up the notebook is Mississippi State center Tulu Smith is going to be out until early January with a foot injury. Now, arguably Mississippi State's best player. And this comes on top of the news that sophomore Keyshawn Murphy, who didn't play a lot last year because they had a kind of a backlog of bigs, but figured to play more this year. He also is out, I believe, with an ankle injury, but it's not nearly as concerning. They think he'll be ready for the start of the season. So that'd be about a month, which is going to be about a month from now. So, Mississippi State not getting off to a good start. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at the way they played last year, and Tolu Smith was a guy they threw it in too often because they were literally the worst 3-point shooting team in America. So it's like, okay, you take away their center here. It's how the hell are they going to score?
Yeah.
If points were hard to come by with this team already, I mean, it's going to be even harder in the non-conference without Tolu Smith in the beginning of conference play. So they better play top 5, top 10 level defense like Chris Jay is capable of. They're going to have to win rock fights in almost the 50s and 60s here.
Yeah. They have a bunch of freshmen coming in, but most of them are like somewhere between like 150 and 300. The only top 100 guy they have is point guard John Hubbard. And so they're really going to be inexperienced at guard, except for Shaquille Moore, who's not really a great shooter, at least not in my opinion. He's more of a rim attacker. So, yeah, you're right. All right, that wraps up the notebook. So now we're going to continue with our conference previews. And so far, we have talked in detail about 9 mid-major conferences. That's the American Athletic, the Atlantic 10, the Big Sky, the Big West, Conference USA, the Ivy League, the Mid-American, the Missouri Valley, and the Western Athletic. This week, we will talk about 2 more, the Mountain West and the West Coast. And over the next few weeks, we will preview the Power 6 conferences, which would be the ACC, the Big East, the Big 10, the Big 12, the Pac-12, and the SEC, which would bring our total number of conference previews, are you ready, Jake, to 17. Now, however, there are 32 Division I conferences to receive automatic bids. That leaves us 15 short, Jake. Sounds like we have a lot of work to do, but we're going to just kind of sum those 15 conferences up today by talking about the best of the rest. So now, Jake, what I'm going to do is I listed out, and you may have a couple more ideas, but I listed out I don't know how many I have here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 teams that I think are going to be the best, what we'll call small mid-majors, teams in the country. And I'll just run over their resumes quickly, and then you could tell me. I put them in the order. I listed them in the order as how well they did last season. So then you could tell me who you like this year. I think all of these teams are probably, well, not all, because I think most of these teams will make the big dance. Question is, have they even gotten better? Maybe could they win a game or two, All right, so we'll start off with Charleston, who was 31-4 last year. They won the Coastal Athletic Conference and then lost in the first round of the NCAA tourney to San Diego State in a close game, 63-57. The 31 wins were the most in the season for Coach Pat Kelsey, who took his 3rd squad to the big dance. He did it twice with Winthrop. Now, Charleston has lost 4 of its top 7 players, but returns 3 all-conference types in power forward Ante Brazovic, Ben Burnham, and is that Rain Smith. Okay, he's a combo guard, and Burnham is a small forward. They also added 4 significant contributors from the portal, including Stony Brook forward Frankie Pocelli. Am I saying that right?
It's Policelli or something like that.
Policelli. Yeah. And Lafayette point guard CJ Fulton, West Liberty wing Bryce Butler, and 3-star freshman Mayar Wall. And one thing I want to say about West Liberty, Charleston has used them as a feeder program for a long time, and Pat Kelsey has. And West Liberty guys go from being a star at West Liberty to being really good players for Charleston. Butler's probably not the only guy from West Liberty on the team right now. So, all right, next up is Colgate. 26-9 last year. The Raiders won both the regular season title and the conference tourney. They lost in the first round of the NCAA to Texas pretty significantly, 81-61. It was a 4th straight March Madness appearance for Colgate under coach Matt Nagel. All 4 have ended with first-round losses, unfortunately. Gone from the team is Tucker Richardson. He was the Patriot Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year, but 5 of the team's top 8 players returning, including 2 all-conference selections of power forward Keegan Records and wing Ryan Moffitt. They also bring in, for the portal, they bring in PJ Carlesimo's son, Kyle Carlesimo, from Eastern Illinois. And and they have some other good returning players. All right, so we'll move on to UNC Asheville, who has our friend Drew Pember on it, who we talked to last year around Christmas time, I believe. UNC Asheville won the regular season last year by 4 games in the Big South, and they also won the conference tourney. They lost in the first round of the NCAAs to UCLA. They got hammered 86-53. It was the first trip to the big dance for the Bulldogs during Coach Mike Morrell's tenure. Now, they have lost wing Tyon Jones to the pros. He was a great shooter, great scorer, but they returned 6 of their 8 top players, including Drew Pember, who won the Player of the Year last year and Defensive Player of the Year in the Big South. They added transfer forward Greg Gant from NC State. He's a former high recruit that's never quite lived up to his potential, but he should flourish in this conference. All right, moving on down, Southern Miss, and we will have a guest from Southern Miss on this show, and that's wing Austin Crowley. The Golden Eagles last year were 25-8. They won the regular season Sun Belt title, but they were upset in the first round of a very competitive conference last year, and a good conference. So they were upset in the first round of the conference tourney, so Louisiana earned the conference's automatic bid, while Southern Miss had to settle for the NIT. And as we've seen many times in the NIT, when you've had a great season and then you don't make it to the NCAAs, what happens in the NIT? You get pummeled, and that's exactly what happened to the Golden Eagles. They were pummeled by UAB, who was the eventual runner-up of the NIT. They lost 88-60. Now, of the 7 Golden Eagles who played at least 15 minutes per game last season, Crowley, who was their leading scorer, and 3 others returned. 2 all-conference players, Felipe Haas and DeAndre Pickney, graduated, and they are big losses because of their size. This is a team that does lack some size this year. Coach Jay Ladner is the Sun Belt's reigning coach of the year, and he brought in 2 significant transfers, including former top 50 recruit, former Illinois star Andre Cabello, and also UNLV power forward Victor
Iwuakor.
All right. And he's kind of a rim protector, and they're going to need him, rebounder rim protector. All right, so moving on down the list, Eastern Kentucky. Last year, they finished 3rd in the A-Sun. They had a 23-14 record. The 23 wins were the most earned by Coach A.W. Hamilton during his 5 years at EKU. The team returns 11 of its top 12 players, with the only exception being guard Cooper Robb. And what's even better news now, keep in mind this team finished 3rd last year in the A-Sun. Liberty has moved on to Conference USA, and conference champion Kennesaw State is rebuilding after losing 5 of its top 8 players, including their clear star, Chris Youngblood. So we should probably talk about some of Eastern Kentucky's returners eventually, but they really had 3 stat sheet stuffers last year, and Michael Moreno, who's a wing, power forward Isaiah Cozart, and wing Devontae Blanton, and also freshman, last year he was a freshman, Tayshawn Comer was named to the all-freshman team, so a lot of promise there. All right, Wright State is next up on the list. They were 18-15 last year. They finished 6th in the Horizon 1 year after going to the NCAA tourney. In terms of winning percentage, it was the worst of Coach Scott Nagy's 7-year tenure at Wright State. However, he returns 5 of his top 8 players, including Freshman of the Year Brandon Noel and first-team All-Horizon selection Trey Calvin. And in the transfer portal, they return wing Tanner Holden, who returns after 1 year at Ohio State. The year before, Holden averaged over 20 points per game and over 7 rebounds per game and led the Raiders to the NCAA tourney. They also bring in wing Bo Myers, a very productive wing from D2 Malone College. I believe it's Malone College. And so Noel is a power forward, by the way. Calvin is a point guard, and they bring back a couple other really good players. Now we're going to talk about Jake's neighborhood, Drexel, 17-15. They finished fifth in the CAA last season. The Dragons' 17 wins were the most earned by Coach Zach Spiker during his 7 years at Drexel, though he did take the team to the NCAA tournament in 2021, which was the post-COVID season. Drexel returns, are you ready, Jake? 10 of its 11 top players, including two-time Defensive Player of the Year, Amari Williams. The lone exception who's not returning is shooting guard Coltrane Washington, who graduated. They also, Lucas Monroe crosses the street from Penn to join the team in the transfer portal. So that's what's going on with Drexel. We got two more teams here. Another ASUN team, and that is Florida Gulf Coast. They finished 9th in the ASUN last year. But Coach Pat Chambers, formerly of Penn State, brings back 7 of his top 9 players. And he added 2 transfers, including point guard Dallin Johnson from Penn State and power forward Keyshawn Kelman from Princeton. Chambers also brought in 3-star freshman Ramir Barno. Now, again, remember, Liberty has moved on to CSUSA. Kennesaw is rebuilding. So this conference is there for the taking, and they return small forward Zach Anderson, who's a pro prospect, and all-conference player, point guard Isaiah Thompson, among others. All right. And lastly, the aforementioned McNeese State. The Cowboys returned just 3 of their top 7 players, but that's probably not a bad thing. Last year, this team was 11-23. They were the next to last team in the Southland Conference. However, their best player in an all-Southland selection, forward Chris Shoemate, does return. So that's good. New head coach Will Wade brought in 3 talented players from Power 6 programs. Combo guard Shada Wells from TCU, who can light it up. Point guard Mike Saunders, who's a nice floor general from Cincinnati. And forward CJ Felder, who really played well at BC, but then when he transferred to Florida, he kind of disappeared off the map. All 3 of these guys could be dominant in the Southland. Another significant transfer is Antavion Cullum from Cal State Bakersfield, who put up really solid numbers there. And Wade also brought in 3-star freshman point guard T-John Brown. And you throw a Shoemate in the mix, and you have a really good team, looking like a really good team, at least in the Southland. So, Jake, I know that was a long time for you to wait, and I listed off the resumes of 9 teams. Who would you like to talk about on this list? Who do you think? I think all these teams are probably, except for maybe Charleston. I mean, 31-4, that's hard to repeat. I think all of these, other than maybe Charleston, are on par to do better than last year, or at least do as well. But who really stands out to you to think, man, I think they could even, not only will they make the big dance, but I think they could win a game or 2.
So if I have to pick one team, Wright State sticks out if they had getting Tanner Holden back. I think Florida Gulf Coast is interesting as well. McNeese is the problem with McNeese is, if they were to get like a 16 seed and have to play in, because the Southland is like that lowly ranked as a conference, I don't think that they would be able to beat a 1. But I certainly think they're interesting with a guy in Will Wade that's been to plenty of tournaments. Shahade Wells played on a TCU team that's made the tournament the last 2 years. So I think they're certainly interesting as well. I just have a hard time going away from Colgate, and I know that the tournament success isn't there, but the style that Matt Langle likes to play, being very efficient, getting up a lot of threes, they're always like very real efficient shooting the ball. It's just a killer that they lose Tucker Richardson, who is, arguably basically their best player the last 2 years, getting Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year last year. They do bring a lot of guys back. They also lose Oliver Lynch-Daniels, who is one of the, if not the best 3-point shooter in college basketball. I mean, he was certainly up there. I believe in makes he was actually first. Oliver Lynch-Daniels was. So they're going to probably regress a little bit, missing those guys and that experience. But also, they're going to win the Patriot League this year. Doesn't like Matt Langle, by the way, who we talked multiple times about, Rich, did not want to hire because at Colgate he never coached a pro. Now, that was a rumor that flew out there for a little bit. That's why they didn't want to hire him. Do you know what Matt Langle's record is at Colgate the last 5 seasons?
Well, I know he's made 4 straight NCAA tournaments and would have made a 5th if it wasn't for COVID.
In Patriot League play, the last 5 years, the Colgate Raiders, Rich, are 71-13. That is nuts. So I know this team is going to be there again. Unfortunately, the success isn't there. But hey, guess what? Brian Dutcher hadn't won a game with San Diego State in the NCAA tournament. They were, 40 minutes from a national championship.
Right.
They were right there. They cut that lead against UConn. Were right there for a national championship. So I look at these teams, and I could say that, Charleston's probably got a good chance with the CAA. You have Drexel in there as well. But I look at Colgate, and I guarantee you this, Rich, they're going to be there. Barring a disaster, they are probably going to be there come March. To give somebody a run in the tournament, they're going to be able to put up points. They're going to shoot the ball well. Just what they do. I know the Colgate Raiders are going to be there.
Okay. What do you make about Drexel? I know, the only real player that stands out statistically are probably, Amari Williams, great shot blocker, great a finish, very efficient in the paint. And Luke House is, a really good shooter. But, I looked at Hofstra and, of course, they're losing Aaron Estrada, 2-time player of the year in the CAA. And at least, Hofstra's still returning some good players, but they've lost probably more than they've gained. So I actually think Drexel is going to be fighting Charleston for the conference championship. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you as well. I think they're going to be right up there with UNC Wilmington, too, who that was obviously the
Well, Wilmington and Townsend have both lost a lot, and they were, 2 of the better teams in the conference last year.
Townsend shocks me that they could make the tournament the last couple of years with some of the talent they had on those teams. But I think Drexel will be up there. Amari Williams is legitimately one of the best defensive players, not just in this conference, Rich, or on the East Coast. He's one of the best defensive players in America.
And on our draft board, I should say.
There's not many players in college basketball that can defend the rim like he can. He's also basically the fulcrum of their offense. They want to throw it to him low. A lot of times they're going to let him catch it being a lefty. They're going to let him catch it on the left block, and they want to get looks to him that way. But on both ends of the court, he is the center point for Drexel, and he's absolutely spectacular. I had to see him play a couple times last year. One, actually, they played against Penn at the DAC. I'd never been to Drexel's arena before. It was very, very cool. But, yeah, on both sides of the ball, like he's going to be one of the more dominant players. Probably I'd say he'll probably be one of the more dominant players on both sides of the ball in college, given the conference that he plays in. And he has another year with COVID after this year if he wants it. There's going to be probably every single Power 5 team in America trying to get this guy. He is the real deal. He's way too good for the Coastal Athletic Association. But this Drexel's team with a dominant rim protector like Amari Williams, a good shooter like Luke House, their point guard Justin Moore is a local guy from Philly. He had his ups and downs last year. I think he could have a way better year for Zach Spiker. And I think the addition of Lucas Monroe, not a guy that's going to put up a lot of numbers in the stat sheet, but you watch him play, Rich, he's the ultimate glue guy, ultimate competitor, local guy. I went to Abington and making probably the shortest transfer that anyone has ever made ever.
Crossing the street.
I mean, I thought I made a short – when I transferred from LaSalle to Temple, I didn't think anyone could transfer shorter than that. He might have found a way to do it because he's a stone's throw away. There's actually a chance
he literally can cross the street.
Yeah. He literally can walk over Market Street. Like, there's probably a world out there where his like, if he lived off campus at Penn, he probably actually lived closer to the DAC than he did to the Palestra. Like, I think there's a world where that exists for sure. So, but a guy that's going to make winning plays, is going to want to defend the better players on the other team. He's going to crash the glass on offense, dive on the floor, just make winning plays. I would have taken him if I was at Temple too, just with what he plays and brings to the table. So with the returners, the addition of Lucas Monroe, and of course Amari Williams, they're going to be right up there in the CAA, and I don't even know if you can really call them a sleeper, Rich, because I think they're easily one of the three best teams.
Right. And as I said, I think Charleston of these 9 teams is the only one that's probably going to take a step back, but they're still going to be really good. And I think it's going to come down to Drexel and them for the conference championship. And I think the winner is going to be a team to reckon with in the tournament. You're not going to want to take them lightly. The teams that I really like on this list is 2 of them. And you mentioned one, Wright State. They basically they could have 3 all-conference players. First team all-conference players in wing Tanner Holden, power forward Brandon Noel, and point guard Trey Calvin. And this is a team that just 1 year before, without Holden, they took a step back. But we know Scott Nagy's been very successful everywhere he's gone, but including Wright State. So I think this team's right back in the tournament, and I think they will be a team you don't want to see in the first round. But the team that hasn't been there, hasn't really even had a ton of success, is Eastern Kentucky. And so I just want to run over some of Eastern Kentucky's numbers, because I talked about Moreno, Coatsart, Blanton, and Comer. But, some of these guys' numbers are just fantastic. And again, we're looking at a team that could, that's 4 guys. 4 of their guys in their starting lineup could actually be all conference players. Now, one problem with this team is depth, but Blanton last year, 17 points per game, 37% from deep, over 6 rebounds a game, close to 3 assists per game. Then we have Moreno. He averaged 11 points per game, but he also grabbed 6.5 rebounds per game, and he shot on high volume. He shot 39% from deep. And you have Coatsart, who's kind of the force in the middle, 64% from the field, and he averaged 7.5 boards per game and 2.5 blocks per game. And then you have Comer, who was the freshman last year. His numbers weren't great, but it was good enough to get him on the all-freshman team. And he did average close to 4 assists per game and 1.2 steals per game. So this is a very talented team. And it's, the conference is there for the taking. I think it's going to come down to them and Florida Gulf Coast in the ASUN. All right, Jake. So that wraps up our conference previews for this episode. I know you got to run, so I want to say goodbye. Thanks for joining us, and I know you're going to be back to do when we do our Mountain West and West Coast Conference previews. So, but for now, adios. And now we'll bring on our special guest for this episode. That is Southern Mississippi's Austin Crowley. Our special guest today is Southern Miss wing Austin Crowley, a first-team All-Sunbelt selection last season. Austin averaged 16 points per game, 4.1 rebounds per game, 2.6 assists per game, and 1.9 steals, while shooting 46% from the floor, 36% from deep, and 75% from the free throw line. He ranked in the top 5 of the Sun Belt for points per game, steals per game, and effective field goal percentage, and he ranked in the top 10 of the conference for win shares and plus minus. Austin, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, it's been a long time in the making. We actually contacted Jack last season, but we never were able to work out a time. So it's great to finally hook up.
Yes, sir.
So how was your summer? Do anything fun, interesting?
This summer, I went out to Las Vegas, trained at Impact Training with a lot of pros, a lot of guys who are looking to be pros, overseas guys, just learning from guys like that, just guys in places where I want to be, guys is in the NBA, just learning as much as soaking up all the information I can get. I had a really good turnout out there. I played really well, got to learn from a lot of great guys. Just this summer was just all about work, just, stacking days, making sure I'm getting better each and every day, 1%, just trying to be the best me. And so I think it was a great summer for me.
Couple questions about that. How long was it? Did you go with any friends? Were there any people you knew really well that were out there? And who were some of the more helpful guys that are already established?
I went out there, a couple of guys from last year's team, Dre Pickney, Felipe Hase were also out there, getting ready for their professional journey. It's going out there and just learning from pros. A lot of guys was working out there. Let me think. What's his name? Josh. He plays for the Dallas Mavericks.
Josh Green.
Yeah, Josh Green was there. It was a lot of NBA guys, a lot of overseas guys. It was one guy. He played professionally overseas in Europe. He has a New Balance deal. He played with Kawhi Leonard in college. He was just picking up things from their workouts, picking up things on how they take care of their body. There was a couple of guys from Orlando Magic out there as well. Like I said, I was just picking up little small things that they did in preparation, learning what they're doing to be the best, because I want to be there as well. So, there was a couple of guys out there. There was just NBA guys. A lot of guys that used to coach in the NBA were out there as well, just giving guys tips on how to be better, tips on how to, attack the day. And I soaked up as much information as I could. And I think it was a great turnout out there, especially just for my first time, just understanding, being around pros, being around guys that do it every single day, for a job.
Mm-hmm.
So it was great just being out there learning as much as I could.
Right. We actually had Josh on the show just before he was going into the draft. I talked to him, I think it was at the G League Elite Camp or the NBA Combine, but Josh is a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you were born in Mississippi, and you began your college career at Ole Miss before transferring to Southern Miss.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, you played high school ball in your hometown of West Point, West Point, Mississippi. I want to make sure everybody knows. Mm-hmm. And you did that for 2 seasons, and then as an upperclassman, you finished off at the prestigious Sunrise Christian Academy in Kansas. Mm-hmm. So what has that journey been like? When you were a boy, did you imagine that you were going to be a top 100 recruit, which you were, and playing high level high school and college ball?
Yes, I've always had that confidence about myself. No matter where I was, I always thought I was one of the best, if not the best. Just growing up in West Point, that's just how everyone is in West Point. We always, try to be the best in everything we do. It's just a hard-nosed city. It's just like Southern Miss. It's a hard-nosed, grit city. This is what we do. You know what I'm saying? We play sports. It's mostly a football city, but it's just a lot of tough guys come out of there. And I had a great time in West Point, just learning from a lot of the guys that used to play there. But my freshman and sophomore year, I played very well. But I was looking for, just to be around a lot more competition, because I know I want to be one of the better players to play this game. So I wanted to up my competition. So I decided to go to Sunrise my junior year, just to be around guys who are going to the Division I level, who are going to the NBA. And man, I think it was one of the best decisions I've made, because every single guy I played with at Sunrise ended up going Division I. It's just a winning program. I think my junior year we finished number 2 in the country. My senior year, we were again like top 8 in the country, and just learning from coaches. Coach Luke Barnwell, that was my head coach. Coach Rod, Coach Luke right now is coaching at Texas Tech. Coach Rod Clark is coaching at Tennessee. So those guys with a lot of information and a lot of just knowledge on how to be better. So I just went out there with a positive mindset, trying to be one of the better guys, working as hard as I could, and I feel like I did that. And just understanding how to be a pro was one of my most things I wanted to do. So I went out there with the guys to highlight some of the names I played with. Malik Hall, he's at Michigan State. Jordan Turner, he was at Baylor, now he's at SMU. Nafali Dante, he's the Oregon, he's known playing the country. I play with a lot of great guys, and that's what I do. I like to compete. I like to be around the better guys because I always want to be the guy, one of the better guys when playing, So that's what I did. I just went out there with my head high, just my confidence at all-time high, just trying to be one of the better guys with the best, And I think that's the only way I can get better is just by being with the better competition because I love to compete. That's what I do. So I had a great time out there for my whole high school career. I think I had a really good time just learning, picking up little small stuff, like I said. And it was just great for me. I think it was one of the better moves I did in my life.
Okay. So the team you used to play for, Ole Miss, I believe you guys play them this year 2 days before Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be excited about that one, huh?
Yeah, man. It's always exciting to see Ole Miss on our schedule. Just because SEC tournament, SEC team, there's just a good competition versus us. I got a lot of friends on that team, but once we step on the court, there's no more friends. That's just who I am as a competitor. But it's good to see them. It's good to see that Southern Miss is getting the opportunity to play with the best. We had a really good season last year, so just by allowing us to play the best, so we can showcase that we are a great team would be great for us, man. I can't wait for it.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's at a neutral site, is it not?
I'm pretty sure, yes. It's I think it's on the coast, right? If I remember. Yeah, it's on the coast, so it'll be at a neutral site, yeah.
All right. That should be fun. I hope it's televised.
Yeah, man.
All right. So let's talk about your game a little bit. Last season you were solid as a shooter and you were excellent around the rim, but you struggled somewhat with turnovers. Mm-hmm. Is that do you think that's a fair assessment from me? And what is there anything in particular you worked on this off season?
It's a fair assessment for sure. The ball is in my hands a lot. The coaches trust me with the ball, so sometimes I'm gonna make mistakes, but that's just basketball. So this summer I just made sure I worked on a lot of my reads, coming out ball screens, hitting the corner, hitting the euro, throwbacks. Just making the right play. I try to make the right play each time I play. So it's gonna be mistakes gonna be made. Only thing I can do looking forward is just minimizing those and just understanding that sometimes the right play has to be made. And sometimes I feel like I, try to make a better play more than the right play. But that's one thing I emphasize this summer at Impact, just learning from guys, learning from bigs on when I need to hit them, learning when I need to hit the Euro pass to the corner, and just making the right play other than trying to make the big play. So it's one thing that I took to heart this summer and just I wanted to be the best in my pick and roll decision. I feel like that's where I struggle sometimes. And during after halftime, coming out of halftime, I would struggle sometimes, but eventually I would get to it. But yes, I think it was a great assessment. Just me having the ball in my hands for the first time a lot. This is the first time I had the ball in my hands a lot. Not just off the ball. I was on the ball a lot. Right. But like I said, you always can get better. This new year, I feel like we're gonna get a lot better. Just making good reads and just playing great basketball.
What aspect of your game do you think is underrated that people don't notice or don't talk about enough?
I'm a great two-way player. I think sometimes people just look at my scoring and think that that's all I do, but I play defense as well. I think we were the number one team in defense in the Sun Belt, and I led the Sun Belt in steals for majority of the year. But I think not just my offensive game, I think I bring the two-way capabilities of guarding as well. I always, no matter what team it is, I always tell my coach I want to guard the best player. That's just who I am as a competitor. So I think my defense probably is one of the things that people overlook sometimes, but I think at the same time, coaches and professionals, they see that as well. It's to a regular person's eyes, they only see 16 points per game sometimes. They really don't look at the defensive end as much, but I think I'm a great two-way player. I think I can guard, the best player each and every night, and that's what I want to do.
I thought that's what I thought that's your answer was going to be, your defense. All right, so let's talk about the team. I'm going to run down for all the listeners kind of your journey last season. You were 25-8. You won the regular season Sun Belt title, but you were upset in the first round of the conference tourney. Louisiana earned the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament, and you had to settle for the NIT. So going into this season, of the 7 Golden Eagles who played at least 15 minutes per game, you and 3 others return. And you lose 2 all-conference forwards in the 2 guys you mentioned, Felipe Haas and DeAndre Pickney. But Coach Jay Ladner, and I should mention the Sunbelt coach, reigning Sunbelt Coach of the Year, brought in 2 significant transfers in St. John's point guard Andre Cabello, a former top 50 recruit, played at Illinois as well, and UNLV power forward Victor Iwako. Did I get that right?
That's right. Iwako, yes.
All right. And I'm guessing that the team will be playing more small ball this season with Mo Arnold and Cabello in the backcourt, you and Devon Ivory on the wings, and Victor.
Donovan. His name Donovan.
Donovan. What? It's Donovan?
Donovan. Yeah, Donovan
okay.
Ivory.
All right. Donovan Ivory on the wings, and then Victor or someone else at center. Would you say that's the plan?
I'm not the coach, but I think we have a great transfer as well. Big Tegra, he's a 7 foot. He's a really good. He has a really big IQ for who he is. He's another transfer that we got in that's very well skilled, plays very well. Victor is another great player too as well. He's a 4-5. He can play block shots, rebound. He's good as well. But I think in my opinion, we have a lot of good transfers, not just Victor and Andre. Big Tegra is great as well, so I don't know. I can't tell you, but coming from practice, I think all 3 of those guys have a really high IQ. They understand what we want to do as a team. They understand places they need to be. They understand the places they need to attack. So, I mean, I think all 3 guys are great players. I don't really know. I mean, it's up for grabs. All 3 players have played really well in practice. They understand our concepts very well. With our assistant coach, Coach Warren, who's our defensive guy, they understand exactly what he wants to do. And it'd be up to Coach Warren and Coach Ladd. I don't know. That's good. That's a great question. I don't know. I think all guys have played very well though lately.
Right. I was just thinking with Corbello, who I'm very familiar with his game. Up tempo really suits him. And so for you guys to go small and then play with 1 big, also you like to attack the rim. And, sometimes I'm watching and Felipe's in there and, Pickney was in there and there's like no room for you to get to the rim because they're taking up space. But I'm thinking this year you might be able to spread things out and you'll be able to attack the rim more. And you're also excellent in transition. And with a passer like Cabello, you could really, really do some damage, you two. But anyway.
I think Cabello is a great guy in transition. I think he understands pace and tempo of the game. You can see that in practice. He understands offense. He's not just, a pass first PG as well. He knows how to get to his spots, understands how to get guys involved. So I think he's a great, point guard. On side of Mo Arnold, he's another great point guard as well. He understands push. He understands tempo as well. He's been a lot more aggressive this year. Just this summer, he's been working his tail off, getting to making his shots as well, just as Cabello. So it's a great assessment. I don't know. I think both guys are playing. I think the whole team is playing very well right now. So that's a good question. I don't know.
All right. So have the coaches said in terms of your role that much of that is have they said, you're definitely going to be doing more of this or more of that?
They just every single day they tell me to attack the day as the best player on the court. Be more vocal, be more of a leader. I feel like I was a great leader last year, but you always can, get better at all times. So this year, I think I'm just focusing on being more of an all-around player, not just scoring, not just rebounding, not just assists, keeping my defense well, but just being more vocal, letting guys know where to be and spots to be, because it's just not on the point guard. It's on me as well. And Coach Ladd always says, the 3 people who can't have a bad day of practice is the coach, the point guard, and the best player. And so I just been attacking each day, just trying to be the best all-around player I can be, So when the end of the season comes, I wanted to be, one of those guys who's a 2-way player, who's all around, can rebound, do everything, and he understands how to get his teammates involved, understands how to get his teammates to be a unity. And so that's what I've been working on. That's what I think Coach Ladd and Coach Warren and Coach Nick has been emphasizing me, just being an all-around guy, just understanding how to make the team better, not just myself.
Right. So in addition to yourself, as I, watched you guys last season and even before you got there, the season before, I think you and Felipe were two of the best kept secrets in college basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And now we don't, you guys aren't on national television a lot, but for those who don't know, Felipe did a little bit of everything. He was an excellent post scorer. He could shoot from the outside. He could rebound. He could pass. I think he was the second leading assist guy on your team and the second leading rebounder on your team. So, how do you replace a guy like that?
You don't just replace one guy like that with another. I think we have great guys, just as Victor Hart. He came off the bench last year. He's been having a really good summer. He's 4'3". He understands the game. He played on the bench last year. He came off the bench last year. He understands our concepts as well. He's been playing very well. You bring in Victor Owaku, who's defensive presence. He understands rebounds. He does everything. He understands when to pick his spots. He plays great in the post. And then, like I said, you got guys like Andre Cabello, Integra, who Cabello is, gets downhill, makes the right pass each and every time. And Teg understands his defensive presence and just who he is. So I don't think you can replace one guy with him, just because how good he is. He's a unicorn. You really don't find guys 6'8", that big, shooting 40% from three, being a quarterback on offense, just getting guys in the right spot. So I think we replaced him with multiple guys, but I think each of those guys have an emphasis on what they are good at. And I think that's what puts them up on that pedestal with him, Like I said before, it's going to be hard to replace Felipe Haase. He's a great player. You can see he's overseas making a lot of money. That's just who he is. He's a great player. So you can't just replace him with one guy, but you can bring in a lot of guys who do what he does individually. So I think that's how we replaced him.
Okay. All right. Andre is a New Yorker. How is he adjusting to Mississippi?
He always tells me he loves it, he always talks about not just basketball, off the basketball, man, food is good, hospitality is great. And that's just what we do here at Southern Miss. Our nickname is La Familia. All around the city, that's how they treat us. They always, I'm in Walmart, Kroger, Corner Market, all these grocery stores. I always get stopped and just take pictures, and they want to talk to me. But that's just how Mississippi is as a whole. Just our hospitality, just how we treat each other. So I think he loves it. He just being around a lot of people who just cherish him. He's in a point now in his career where he needs to be great right now, and that's what we're doing. We're pushing him to be the Andre Cabello that he is, and I think that's the thing he's done this summer, this year. Just being a leader, and just understanding that we want him to be Andre. We don't need him to be anybody else. We want him to be Andre, and I think he's been terrific this year, this summer. He's been great. So he's loving it. As much as I talk to him, his locker is right beside mine. We talk all the time. He's been loving it down here, He came from Illinois and then New York. So he said this is more of a, hospitality state. Everybody speaks no matter where you are. If you don't know them, if you do know them, they still speak to you. He stop you in the hallway, stop you everywhere. So he's been loving it, man. Just getting around people who just cherish him and we want him to be him. So I think he loves it.
Good. I think there may have been a lot of pressure on him playing in New York City. I'm hoping the small town environment in Mississippi just is a perfect fit for him. So wishing him the best.
Mm-hmm.
So I got one more question for you. This is your 5th year, and there's no doubt, that you want to make the big dance this year. What will be the key, do you think, for this team to get over the hump? Last year you were so close. What's going to be the key, you think, to getting over the hump this year?
Just building. I feel like this year we have a lot more talent. Whereas last year we just had, as soon as we met in July, man, the chemistry was crazy. You know what I'm saying? We didn't have all these guys jumping out the gym, doing all jumping over the rim, doing that. But I feel like we had that this year. And I think if we can get this chemistry how it was last year, but it's been great, just from our summer practices and our practices now, I think the chemistry is good. But if we can get to the chemistry that we had last year with the guys that we have now, with the athletes we have now, the shooters we have now, I think that the dance is gonna be ours. Just we can roll and write our name in there. That's what we need to do. So I feel like we get our chemistry to where it was last year, or even better. Just it's gonna be March Madness for us, because this year we're not thinking NIT, we're not thinking regular season conference champs. We're just thinking March Madness, and as long as we keep the main thing is winning. I think they can't keep us out, because we're gonna be a great team. We have a lot of pieces to the puzzle that's gonna be great, and it's just by everybody understanding their role, understanding what we need to do and what we need to accomplish to be that March Madness team. Because you can see, it's been done. It's a lot of mid-majors that make great runs in the March Madness, and we want to be one of those teams. So I can always emphasize to them each and every day, let's keep the main thing. The main thing is winning. Just like Jalen Hurts said, winning is the main thing. So, let's keep the main thing, no matter how you feeling, how bad of a day you having when you step inside this court. It's just La Familia. That's what we do. We want to win. So I think as long as we keep our mindset and our head on straight, I think, March Madness is there for us, and it's there for us to take it.
All right. I agree. Austin, I want to thank you for being on the show, and I wish you and the team the best, and I'm going to be watching any chance I can. And I hope you will come back after the season and tell us what's next for you.
Okay. Appreciate you, my man.
All right. Take care, Austin. Have a great season. So now I'm joined by Cam Reel to do the NBA notebook section of the show. Cameron, as we predicted, we said Jrue Holiday might be traded sooner rather than later, and we also talked about him going to Boston for Malcolm Brogdon and others, draft picks essentially. But so what ended up happening was the Celtics did get Holiday in exchange for center Robert Williams, Brogdon, and 2 draft picks. And those 2 draft picks were Golden State's first rounder in 2024. And that's top 4 protected, and Boston's unprotected first rounder in 2029. So when we look at this trade, combined with the trade of Dame Lillard, essentially, here's what the Trailblazers did. They traded Lillard, Yusuf Nurkic, Naz Little, and Keon Johnson for DeAndre Ayton, Malcolm Brogdon, Tamani Kamara, 3 first rounders, and 2 pick swaps. So what do you think? Let's take it from the Trailblazers perspective first, and then we'll talk about Boston. So what do you think of what this whole thing that the Trailblazers ended up sending out 4 players, getting 4 players back, and getting 3 first rounders and 2 pick swaps?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Heat fans can continue to harp on how good their offer was all they want. The Heat front office can continue to complain. Jimmy Butler can be just about as emo dressed as humanly possible. He can, he can pierce every part of his body if he wants, but this is just a flat better deal for Portland than anything that the Heat could have possibly offered. I mean, not only did they, move Lillard for a pretty big haul, but they also got off of Nurkic's contract, which you could argue they probably would have had to ship out a first had they not packaged them as a deal together. Obviously to different teams, but I think for Portland's perspective, I think it was really important to them to move off of that deal while they could. And to bring back, a former number 1 overall pick. You can debate whether or not Ayton should have been the number one overall pick. I think most of us would agree he shouldn't have been. Even, for you, Rich, I mean, on draft night, you probably would have said no, it should have been Doncic that night. But, he's clearly a top 2-3 talent in that draft. A change of scenery guy of the highest order. Ayton's a big bring in. You get a second chance on Brogdon. You take back kind of an injury risk in Brogdon, but I mean, a guy that's, he was the rookie of the year. He's been a borderline all-star most of his years in the league, especially when he was with Indiana. 3 first rounders, very solid. It's about what they would have gotten from the Heat in their offer, and 2 pretty favorable swaps. I mean, the way that the Bucks timeline is looking, I think more than likely, those will be picks that they actually, incur and keep. So you're really looking at the potential of 5 first rounders. You throw in Kamara, who was, not a first rounder, but a solid draft pick, a guy that the team was hoping, could be a rotation player for them. I think it's an incredibly solid deal. If you're Portland, you've got a guy in-house with Ayton who you hope can be an all-star within the next year or two. And a guy that, is going to fit nicely along with their developing high talent, high ceiling backcourt of, Scoot Henderson. God, I always blank on his damn name. Why do I do this?
Which player? Oh, Sharp?
Yeah, Shaden Sharp. God, I always confuse him with the guy in Houston. What's his
name? Green?
Yeah, I always get him and Jalen Green confused.
Okay.
Anyway, so if you're Portland, you're getting back Ayton, who you hope can develop into an all-star within the next season or two, and a guy who's going to fit really well with this young developing backcourt. You've got Shaden Sharp in year 2. You've got Scoot Henderson, who likely make a run at Rookie of the Year with his added minutes. I think this team is better off now by far than the sort of 2 timeline direction that they had been going in with Lillard. What do you think, though, Rich?
I like it. I like it. I mean, if you just look at the 4 players that were swapped, you could kind of make somewhat of an argument, depending on how much you think Lillard has in the tank and how good Ayton is. You could make an argument that was close to a fair swap, just as is, no draft picks. And so they end up with 3 first rounders and 2 pick swaps. So yeah, to get 3 good NBA players, and give up one all-star, aging all-star at that, and then to get all those picks. Yeah, you got to think Portland has done well here, and who knows? They might not even be done. They could ship out Brogdon too.
And Jeremy Grant will be more than likely on the chopping block as well.
Granted, he can't be traded till like January. He can't be. I think it's like the 15th of January, something like that.
Yeah, but you got to think. They'll be looking at, how much do we really want to compete now? Do we want to give some of our younger guys some more space for minutes? They can really commit to a little bit deeper tank if they want to. I think I wouldn't be shocked if Brogdon or Grant end up getting moved by trade deadline.
Right. So now, from Boston's point of view, we almost are. We may have to come up with a new term other than depth chart, because wow, their bench is just wow. I mean, right now, if you look at their starting 5, maybe the best in the NBA. Holiday, White, Brown, Tatum, KP, assuming that they want to bring Al Horford off the bench. But essentially they're going to be the 5 guys getting the most minutes. But behind them, there's like it's like scary. And
Yeah, Rich,
and people are saying, "Oh, he's, Holiday is going to improve their defense so much." But you just gave up your rim protector, and KP's is not like a grade A rim protector. How Al Horford definitely is not. So, what? Yeah, I just don't know how much did you gain on defense.
Rich, I go back and forth. I think prior to the Holiday trade, I would agree with you. I think that they would have really been giving up a lot defensively if they had stayed pat with their team pre-Holiday trade. Why? Because they moved Marcus Smart out. And Grant Williams. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, arguably their 2 best defenders.
Right.
And
their third would have been Robert Smith. So
yep.
They got rid of their 3 best defenders and they replaced it with one guy who was abused in the playoffs.
Yes. I think with Holiday, and I think with the pre-Holiday roster that they were looking at rolling out for the season, they would have had to give up on their switching scheme. And I think that was really a big part of what has made Boston probably the best defensive team in the league for, the past 5 seasons. The stats don't always back that up, but I mean, when they went to the finals, they were by far the best defensive team in the league. And a big part of that was because they could switch 1 through 5. They had the luxury of Smart who could really guard up several positions. Robert Williams, Al Horford, even though he's not a rim protector, he's a very good positional defender. Really, frankly, an incredible one. I mean, they're mainly their primary option for guys like Giannis. Very, very sound defensively. I think, with the team that they were looking at, they wouldn't have had that guard that could help them switch. With Holiday, they don't have to give up on that system anymore. And I think that's a huge difference maker for them in terms of where their roster's at now post-trade. On Porzingis, I have to say I disagree with you. I think he's actually, when healthy, he is a grade A rim protector. I think positionally, defensively is where you kind of run into problems with him. Where, he's just not as capable laterally as he was, when he was with the Knicks. Because he was downright scary in terms of his defensive ceiling, when he was younger, pre-injuries. On Dallas, he was a flat liability defensively because he was always coming into the season hurt. Didn't have a healthy offseason, couldn't move. And, with Washington, people didn't get to see him a lot, but he really was beginning to show like who he could have been before the injuries. Granted, the movement is still an issue for him. As positionally sound as he can be and as good a rim protector as he can be, he really struggles to stay in front of little guys. In front of any kind of speed, he has a harder time. But he can really make up for it with his length. He's a good defender. I gotta push back a little bit on the bench. I think Jordan Walsh is more prepared for minutes than people probably think. I know they really like him in Boston. Brissett is kind of the pivot point for me because when he was with Indiana, he had a much larger role in past years. He's a very high level defender, like a very high level defender. His on-off stats look great. His plus minus looks great. And I think he fills a role along with Walsh that the Celtics haven't had in past years, which is they don't have anybody to back up Brown and Tatum. They haven't for a long time. A lot of times it was Brown. A lot of times it was Derek White, but Derek White's really not quite that level of. I mean, he's really good on guards, but I don't think you want Derek White guarding up positions as often as he would need to if he was their backup. I think Peyton Pritchard is particularly ready for a larger role, a guy that can really contribute offensively in a big way. Really great floor spacer, and he's feisty on defense. He's undersized, so he's a little bit of a minus on that side. But I think with their current roster, they still have the goods to be a top 5 defense, with the correct scheme. I think with their bench, they have to address backup center. It has to be done. I mean, right now you're looking at Luke Cornett, maybe some Wenyen Gabriel, who they just signed. In the regular season, that's great. That's not awesome, but it's doable. But one injury to Horford, one injury to Porzingis really makes them very thin up front, and you're looking at a lot of Tatum already playing power forward. I don't think that's necessarily a problem. If anything, it could be, beneficial. Give them even more wing defenders, more wing offense, more creators on the court. I think that's what they're going for with their roster changes. It comes down to, can they find a guy on the fringes through trade or free agency that can fill that backup center role and just give them another option and come playoff time? I personally, I think Dwight Howard would be a really good find for them. Personally, they need somebody.
You're dying to see Dwight back in the league.
I am. They need somebody that can come off. They need a JaVale McGee type guy. He just needs to be solid. He needs to play good defense, be positionally sound, and rebound the hell out of the ball. That's what they need. They need a big guy to fill in some minutes when Porzingis is resting, when Horford's resting. If they can't find that, they're going to struggle for a while. But I think on the wing, this is the best defensive wing setup. Derek White alone is arguably one of the best wing defenders in the league.
I should have pointed him out when I was talking about their best defenders, because he is a great, on-ball defender.
Oh yeah.
Let me ask you this. We talked about the World Cup, for about 3 shows in a row or so. If there was a country, we'll just make it a new country. How about Realville? And Realville sent to the World Cup Peyton Pritchard, Svi Mikhailuk, Sam Hauser, O'Shea Brissett, and Luke Cornett as their starting 5. Where would that team finish in the World Cup?
I don't want to talk about it, Rich. If I get Dwight Howard, maybe we'll make it out of pools.
Oh, you can replace Cornett with Dwight Howard.
I'll take that.
I think that team might finish, I don't know, 12th in the World Cup.
I'll tell you another guy. It still blows my mind that he's not playing anymore. But where is DeMarcus Cousins? Why is he not on
Puerto Rico last year? Played in Puerto Rico last year.
You can argue, some of these guys are like Dwight Howard is washed from what he was. DeMarcus Cousins is washed from where he was. But you can't tell me that these guys can't play 10 minutes off the bench for you and be dominant in their role.
Yeah. I think with Cousins, and maybe a little bit even with Howard, I think it's more of their personalities. So, all right. So, I agree that Boston, there are advantages of having Holiday. And one of the most impressive things through this whole Holiday situation was how much the Bucks valued him. They're still talking about him. They didn't one of the things that made this trade, held up the original trade was the Bucks didn't want anybody to know they were throwing Holiday out there because they didn't want to upset him. They didn't want to upset the team. They really loved him and they hated to get rid of him. And I've always been a huge Jrue Holiday fan. So, but the depth that is, I was already down on Boston's depth, and losing Robert Smith is, to me, and Brogdon. Holiday and Brogdon, okay, you don't lose anything there, obviously, but losing Robert Smith was a killer for a team that already was kind of like, we're lacking bigs. So,
yeah,
right.
I think the tough point with Bob Williams, because when he's on the court, he's excellent.
Yeah.
And I think we still haven't seen his best offensive ceiling either.
Right.
I think he really completed them in a lot of ways, but I mean, you start to look at the games played, it's like, God, can this guy play 40 games in a season?
Yeah.
And I mean, at some point, that just becomes even more of a liability, where you've got 3 centers on the roster that can't stay on the court.
Yeah.
I think they're probably better off going off, find somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I hear that. All right, so we'll move on to the Harden saga, and I don't know if anything's really changed here. Harden didn't show up for the first day of training camp. He didn't show up for media day. Then he showed up yesterday. So he's at camp, and right now there's been any antics of any kind. So I don't know what to make of this situation. The Sixers, I've never been a big fan of how Daryl Morey handles things. I just get rid of the guy. Just get rid of the guy. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, Rich, while we're on the Morey topic, I think he has a philosophy in terms of like as a GM that I disagree with, and that he really, in some ways it's his strength, but I think it's also kind of his downfall in terms of building contenders. He really looks at guys as assets. I think that's always been kind of the read on him. And like, yeah, as a GM to some extent you have to, but I think when you're penny pinching and it's, how much analytically can I get out of a guy for how little I can spend on them, you're eventually going to run into problems like this. I think that was what held back the Rockets teams, when he was there, trying to, get as much as you can out of a guy like Ben Gordon or so on. I think that's ultimately what's bubbling up here with Harden as well. Like,
I don't know.
Maybe the first time
I don't know if I quite follow.
I think he's very, like, Morey, I feel like is very much a chess player in terms of the way he GMs. Like, and like everyone knows that there was a promise. You're never going to find any evidence that there was a contract promise to Harden, but it was there. Like, if guys know that happens, it's a part of the league, and he didn't follow through. I think that's really what we're seeing here. The problem for Harden now, and why he is at training camp, is ultimately he's handcuffed.
Mm-hmm.
He's opted into the contract. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent. If he doesn't report and play well, he's not going to earn that contract that he wants. It's not going to happen.
Right.
And ultimately,
he could be fined.
He can be fined, yeah. And I think, when I say, Morey's a little bit more of a chess player than maybe, some GMs, he knows that too. When it comes down to Harden's requesting a trade or so on.
What good does that do the team? What good does that do the team?
I think exactly. It doesn't do any good. That's what I mean as far as like you're dealing with assets more so than the people. that's kind of what I think about, just the way that things were handled as far as Westbrook's trade or Chris Paul coming in and out, even when Dwight Howard was with the Rockets. I just feel like there's like maybe like a bias towards the analytics with certain players.
Are you saying he basically ignores what the player is as a person and just looks at the
I think that might be part of it.
Production divided by the dollars, or dollars
and maybe
divided
isn't
by the production?
Maybe isn't concerned with fit and how players work with one another, and is more so concerned with here's their points per game.
But see,
here's their
then again, when he started bringing in everybody from the Rockets when he first came over, I was like, really? These are the only guys in the league you can come up with? And he gave them big money, too.
Yeah.
I mean, PJ Tucker is like, what, the third oldest guy in the league? And he shouldn't even be in the NBA.
Yeah, and he's the fourth highest paid on the Sixers.
Is he really? He's not making that much. He's not making that.
He's like 10, 11, 12 million a year.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's making.
A lot.
And I don't even know if he belongs in the league at this point, I mean,
come playoff time, you want him on your team, but not for $12 million.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't know. I'm tired of talking about it.
Seriously.
All right, so we'll move on to the next item, and that's Draymond Green is supposed to be out for at least a month due to an ankle injury. I heard they're going to be checking his status in about 2 weeks, so maybe it might be shorter than a month. But any reaction to that, other than this is another team that really doesn't have a lot of depth, especially in terms of bigs, and they got a big hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too concerned. I mean, it's not the way you want to start a season. I mean, personally, like, I know how it is to deal with ankle injuries. It sucks. At least with Draymond Green, he's, in terms of like the way he handles his body, the way he handles his work, he's the consummate professional. He's going to come back healthy. He's going to come back strong. He's going to come back in shape. And, to like talk about a guy that's going to lead from the bench. It's an opportunity for the Warriors to, see what their center prospects are looking like, and who's going to earn some more bench minutes.
Yeah, good point.
When Green returns.
Though it would be nice to at least see him a little bit, because the Chris Paul dynamic. But I don't know if those two guys are going to play a lot together.
I don't think they will. No.
Right. All right, so we'll move on to the next item. Kai Jones and
Kai Jones Island. Let's go.
Yeah. I put a little clip in there with some video jokes. I don't know if you saw it on Twitter. We were talking about Kai Jones, and I threw some funny images up while we were talking. And then I felt bad because soon after it was announced he was on indefinite leave for personal reasons. So we were thinking it was just a drunk night, of him tweeting. And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe he's got some serious mental health issues. Maybe I shouldn't have, posted that on Twitter. But come to find out, they're not really being very descriptive. They said he's leaving the team for personal reasons. And, yesterday, I believe it was Greg Brown on an Exhibit 10 with Dallas. He's teammates with Kai at Texas. And they asked him, what's going on? And he said, oh, I talked to him yesterday. He's fine. He couldn't be better. So I'm thinking, maybe this guy has got like some serious health issues, like depression or whatever. And, Greg Brown is saying, he's fine. So I don't know what to make of this. In Greg Brown, in so many words, said, this is the way Kai is. He's kind of, different. He's just a different type of guy. So if he's just a different type of guy, why is he out indefinitely for personal reasons?
You got two takes here from me. Take one is it really is personal reasons. some of the behaviors we've been seeing from him. I mean, not to kind of speculate and put it out this way, but Kai Jones is at the age where, as a young man, those mental health problems begin to surface, and or you start to recognize them as mental health problems.
Right.
And so, you
You're
gotta
talking bipolar, schizophrenia.
Yeah, I mean, what have you. I mean, it's also the point in life where you start to recognize, like, hey, this is something about me that's been a continuing problem or issue, or,
Right.
I'm seeing these behaviors and this is how it's affecting my life. You start to, seek out help for things, and, also be told, hey, you should maybe consider, therapy or so on. So I think that's one take, where like you have a teammate like Greg Brown who just says, oh, this is how he is. Well, here's why he's how he is.
Right.
That's one possibility. The other possibility is you get the quote unquote personal reasons. Hey, this is a problem with your team, your teammates. You're speaking about XYZ in the media.
Right.
You don't do that here. You don't do that in the league.
And so they're figuring out what to do with him. In the meantime, they don't want him around.
Yeah. Either Kai Jones figures shit out and come back to the team, or we're at the point now where you're clearly not going to figure shit out, and we're gonna, remove you from.
Or if you're gonna figure shit out, you've already burnt your bridge here, so you're gonna have to do it somewhere else.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
And so stay home, because you're only gonna upset people here, and we don't need it.
Yep. I think those two are pretty strong possibilities. I think,
right.
And it could be a combination of both.
More likely. I think that one's more likely.
Yeah, probably.
And that would also kind of go in with what Greg Brown's saying.
Yeah.
Not that Greg Brown is a doctor or anything.
No.
Greg Brown has had some, at least at Texas, had some issues himself. So anyway. All right. So a couple interesting signings. And I think the Reggie Bullock signs with the Rockets, and I think that goes along with what you were saying. The Rockets are all in.
They are, man. I mean, just another adult in the room too. Another guy that's consummate pro, been around forever, knows how to contribute defensively, knows how to keep himself in shape, knows how to shoot. Another guy that's going to be a strong influence on some of these young guys, and when they're ready to take the mantle, he'll be out the door. He'll be ready to retire by the time they're really kicking into gear. But the more I look at this Rockets team, the more I look at some of the moves that they make, the more I like it. I think maybe this isn't the year for them to really step into the playoffs, but do I think that they could compete? Yeah. Do I think they can compete? I totally do.
Yeah. And then the next one is something I've been calling for about 3 shows in a row. I kept on saying, Milwaukee signed Cameron Payne. Milwaukee signed Cameron Payne. Guess what? Milwaukee signed Cameron Payne.
We're on it, Rich. We got to start keeping receipts on some of these predictions, man. We really do.
So I think that's a great move by the team. I'm not a huge Cameron Payne fan, and he was a lottery pick, and I don't think he's ever come close to living up to that. But he's not a bad player, and
no, and he's got what he has, Rich, over just about any guy that's left in the free agent pool. He's got a shitload of playoff experience at this point.
Right. So
I mean,
perfect guy
with the Suns.
Perfect guy to back up Dame Lillard. And so now I feel much better about the Bucks situation. And maybe Boston, by next week, maybe Boston will make a move where I'll say, oh, okay, now I feel much better about that situation. But as it stands, after the Dame trade, I was uncomfortable with what the Bucks depth chart looked like, and now I feel much better about it. And I think Boston could do something similar in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I think I'm more comfortable with Boston's depth right now. I think if you're looking at Milwaukee's top 6, you feel pretty good about it. But I think on the wing, they have some issues. Campaign, point guard was going to be a question mark for them. Was it going to be Ty, and so on. But I'm worried about their wing. I think, they've got Middleton. He'll be stepping into a little bit smaller role. He'll have a little bit more defensive responsibilities. Outside of him, though, I mean, you're talking Pat Connaughton, who's solid. He's had some good playoff moments, but I don't know if you love him as a starter long term. You got Beasley, Jay Crowder. I think a lot of it's going to come down to Marjon Beauchamp and how ready he is to sort of take on a bigger role.
Or if Andre Jackson somehow surprises us and has fixed the shot. But as we saw in Summer League, obviously there's not much turnaround between the national championship game and Summer League, but his jump shot didn't look any different. So yeah, you have a lot of guys that really could play defense, like Jackson and Beauchamp, but they can't shoot. And then you have guys who could shoot, but they're not really great defenders, and Beasley and Connaughton. So yeah, it's it'll be
I think
AJ Green too can shoot.
Yeah, I like AJ Green.
Yeah, so yeah, it'll be interesting. All right. So that wraps up our NBA notebook, and we were actually splitting into 2 episodes this week, so I didn't bother with the mailbag. So any final thoughts here?
No, Rich, I'm getting excited for the season. We got, once again, the off-season grades are on their way.
Yeah,
we had a couple of things to edit and. A couple of big.
Well, what happens is, every time you get a couple of edits, and then you're waiting for this, you're waiting for that, and then a couple more trades happen, but yeah, we're gonna cut it off this weekend.
We're almost there.
Got to.
We're almost there.
Well, you know what, too? I cast a wide net when looking for guests because you never know what's going to happen. This week, we got 3. Which is one of the reasons why we're splitting into 2 episodes. Some weeks I cast a wide net and I get nothing. So, when these guys are available, I want to get them on the show. So yeah. All right. Excuse me. All righty. So thanks for joining us, Cameron. I'm going to close this episode up. As always, I want to thank our listeners. I want to thank our special guest, Southern Mississippi's Austin Crowley, for joining us. And if you ever miss an episode, you can get caught up at hoopsprospects.com and hit us up on social media or send us an email at admin@hoopsprospects.com if you want to get into the mailbag, which we probably will do next week, hopefully. So we'll be back next week, and we'll have another NBA notebook, another college hoops notebook, and we'll continue to do our college conference previews. We're down to 6 conferences now. Oh, actually, no, I take that back. We're down to 8 conferences, Cameron. And then that will bring us total. We previewed, let's see, 9 so far, and we're going to end up doing 17 of the 32 conferences. So yeah, maybe you want to join us for the SEC. Talk about your volunteer.
I'll be there, Rich.
All right. So thanks for joining us.
Yes, sir.